Have you ever noticed how some people can steal your peace in just a few seconds? A single comment, a dismissive tone, a look that cuts deeper than words, and suddenly you feel smaller, weaker, and out of control. We call them difficult people. And the truth is, every one of us has them in our lives. It could be a colleague who never listens, a family member who always criticizes, or a friend who knows exactly how to push your buttons. The question is not whether you will meet difficult people, because you will. The question is, what will you do when you do? Most of us fall into the same trap. We try to win the argument, to explain ourselves louder, or to fight back with the same energy we just received. And yet when the conversation ends, we walk away exhausted, replaying every word, wishing we had handled it differently. But what if I told you that you do not have to lose your peace in these moments? That the real power has never been in controlling them, but in learning how to control yourself. Because the truth is, difficult people do not take away your peace. You give it away when you let their behavior decide your response. Today, we are going to explore how to handle difficult people in a way that allows you to keep your peace and reclaim your power. Not by overpowering them, not by silencing them, but by shifting the way you see and respond to them. This is not about winning a fight. It is about choosing freedom. The first step in handling difficult people is to change the way you see them. It is easy to label them as rude, arrogant, or impossible. And once you put them in that box, you stop looking any deeper. But the truth is, most difficult people are not truly trying to hurt you. They are trying to protect themselves from something they may not even fully understand. Their anger often hides fear. Their criticism often hides insecurity. Their need to control often hides a deep fear of being powerless. And when you begin to see them this way, something in you shifts. Instead of asking, how can I beat them? You begin asking, what is driving them? Instead of seeing them as an enemy, you begin to recognize them as a person carrying their own unhealed pain. And that awareness matters, because the moment you stop taking their behavior personally, you stop handing over your peace so easily. Their words may still sting, but they no longer define you. Their tone may still be sharp, but it no longer cuts into your worth. This shift in perspective does not excuse bad behavior, but it gives you back control. Perspective is power. It allows you to choose a response instead of reacting on autopilot. The real mistake we make is believing that if we can just explain ourselves enough, argue long enough, or defend ourselves loudly enough, we can change them. But the truth is, you cannot change another person's heart in the middle of conflict. What you can change is how you respond in that moment. And that response will often determine whether the situation escalates into chaos or dissolves into calm. So the next time someone speaks to you with anger or disrespect, pause. Remind yourself, this is not about me. This is about what they are carrying. Ask yourself, what if I do not need to win? What if I only need to stay calm? What if my goal is not to prove a point, but to protect my peace? Because when you stay calm, you keep your peace. And when you keep your peace, you keep your power. The truth is, we cannot stop difficult people from entering our lives, but we can stop giving them the power to control our inner world. It begins the moment you decide to see them not as a threat to your worth, but as a mirror reflecting their own struggle. And once you do, you discover a freedom most people never find. Now that we have shifted our perspective, it is time to talk about what we can actually do in the moment when we face difficult people. It is one thing to understand that their behavior comes from fear or insecurity. It is another thing to stand in front of them and not get pulled into the storm. That requires tools, not just awareness. And when you learn these tools, you begin to notice that you do not have to give away your peace so easily. You can stay calm, you can stay present, and you can keep your power. The first strategy is the art of listening differently. Most people listen only to respond, not to understand. With difficult people, this pattern makes things worse, because they often feel unheard and dismissed, even when they are not right. So when they start speaking, slow down. Let them finish their thought, even if you disagree with every word. Your silence in that moment is not weakness, it is wisdom. Because when you let someone finish, you remove the fuel from their fire. They may expect you to interrupt or fight back, but when you do not, you disarm them. And when it is your turn to speak, you can reflect what you heard, not to agree, but to show that you listened. A simple phrase like, "I hear that this is important to you," or "I can see you feel strongly about this," lowers the tension. It tells their nervous system that they are not in a battle. And once the tension lowers, real conversation becomes possible. The second strategy is intentional silence. Silence is powerful when used with purpose. Many difficult people thrive on reaction. They throw sharp words, and what they want most is to see you flinch, to see you lose control. When you meet their outburst with calm silence, you take away the reward. They are forced to sit with their own words without the fuel of your reaction. Silence is uncomfortable, but it is also disarming. If someone insults you, instead of firing back, pause, look at them, breathe, and wait. Often they will stumble, repeat themselves, or soften their tone, because the energy they expected never came. Silence is not surrender, it is strategy. It is a way to hold your ground without escalating the conflict. The third strategy is asking reflective questions. Difficult people often expect confrontation, but a thoughtful question can change the entire dynamic. For example, if someone belittles you, you might calmly ask, "Did you mean to say that to hurt me?" This question is not aggressive, but it forces them to confront their intent. Most people will either backtrack or become aware of their behavior. Another powerful question is, "Help me understand what you mean." It shifts the focus from attack to explanation, and it reminds them that you are choosing clarity over combat. Questions like these interrupt the cycle of reaction, and they place you back in control of the conversation. The fourth strategy is setting boundaries with clarity and calmness. One of the hardest lessons in life is that you do not owe anyone unlimited access to your time or energy, especially people who drain it. You can say no without anger. You can end a conversation without guilt. For example, if someone is pushing you into an argument, you might say, "I do not have the time or energy to continue this right now. Let's revisit it tomorrow." Or, if someone demands your immediate agreement, you can say, "Is this something we need to decide on right now, or can we think about it and come back later?" These phrases create space, they protect you, and they communicate clearly that your peace matters. When you combine these four strategies, you begin to notice something powerful. The person in front of you may not change, but you no longer feel powerless. Listening with presence, choosing intentional silence, asking reflective questions, and setting boundaries are not just techniques, they are practices of self-respect. They tell the world, and more importantly yourself, that your peace is not for sale. Imagine this in practice. A colleague criticizes you in a meeting, expecting you to defend yourself immediately. Instead of snapping back, you pause, let them finish, and calmly say, "I hear that you are concerned. Can you tell me more about what you mean?" The room shifts, because instead of conflict, you created space for dialogue. Or picture a family member raising their voice, throwing harsh words at you. Instead of matching their volume, you stay silent, breathe, and let the weight of their words fall into the space they created. Silence unsettles them, and suddenly the power dynamic changes. Or think of a friend who constantly demands your time. Instead of feeling trapped, you say, "I care about you, but I do not have 5 minutes right now. Can we plan to talk tomorrow?" You set a boundary, and in doing so, you protect your energy. What you will find is that these strategies not only change your conversations, they change you. They build confidence. They strengthen your sense of control, and they remind you that you are not at the mercy of difficult people. You are always choosing, whether you realize it or not. And the more you practice, the more natural these choices become. The beauty of these strategies is that they do not require the other person to change. They do not depend on them being reasonable or kind. They depend only on you deciding that your peace is worth protecting. That decision alone shifts the balance of power. Because the truth is, no one can take your peace without your permission. And when you choose to listen with presence, to use silence wisely, to ask questions instead of attacking, and to set boundaries with clarity, you stop giving that permission. So the next time you face a difficult person, remember these 4 practices. Listen fully, even if you disagree. Use silence to disarm, not to surrender. Ask reflective questions that shift the dynamic. And set boundaries that protect your peace. Do this, and you will discover that even in the most difficult conversations, you can remain calm, you can remain strong, and you can remain in control of the one thing that matters most, your peace. The truth is, you will always encounter difficult people. You cannot control who they are or how they act, but you can always control the way you respond. And that is where your real power lies. When you choose to listen instead of react. When you use silence as strength. When you ask questions instead of attacking. When you set boundaries with calm clarity. You are not only changing the conversation, you are changing yourself. You are teaching your mind and your heart that your peace is worth protecting, that your worth does not depend on anyone's tone, and that your strength is not measured by how loudly you fight, but by how wisely you respond. And hear me on this. You do not need their approval to be whole. You do not need their respect to stand tall, and you do not need their permission to protect your peace. You already have what it takes. Do not let anyone convince you that you are powerless in the face of their anger or control. You have the ability to walk away stronger, calmer, and freer than when the conversation began. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, remind yourself, I do not have to give them my peace. I do not have to give them my power. I choose to stay calm. I choose to stay strong. I choose to stay free. Because the truth is, your peace is not theirs to take. It is yours to protect. Every one of us has walked away from a conversation, replaying every word, wondering why we let someone else steal our peace. We tell ourselves, next time I will handle it better. But unless we decide to change, the cycle repeats. The truth is, peace does not come from avoiding difficult people. Peace comes from learning how to stay grounded even when they show up. And power is not about controlling them. It is about refusing to let their behavior control you. You cannot always choose who walks into your life, but you can always choose who gets to stay in your mind. You cannot stop the storm around you, but you can anchor yourself so deeply that the storm cannot move you. That is the invitation here. Not to live a life free of conflict, but to live a life where conflict no longer decides your worth. So the next time you feel the pull to react, remember, you are not powerless. You can pause, you can breathe, you can choose silence instead of shouting. You can set boundaries instead of surrendering. You can ask questions that shift the conversation instead of adding fuel to the fire. You can walk away with your peace intact. And let me say this clearly. Protecting your peace is not selfish.